Niranjanam Nityam Anantarupam Bhaktanukampadhrita Vigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirsha Namah. Namaste and welcome to our Sunday Discourse, which are a series of talks on the Vedanta philosophy with special attention to the application of those teachings. Last Sunday, we were looking at some of the Vedantic teachings as taught in the Bhagavad Gita by Sri Krishna, with reference to the theme of mental health, which in this present global crisis at various levels, whether it's individually, or as a family, or as a community, as a nation, as a humanity, we all are going through, unprecedented, so to say. And we can see that a little virus can put everything out of order. And in spite of our best knowledge of science and technology and everything, more or less as a humanity, we are at our wits' end, do not know anything, how to handle the situation, what's going to be there tomorrow. It reveals to us there is something lacking in our knowledge and wisdom. And when we want to examine it, what could be the cause? We as a humanity have come through hundreds of years, have got all these wonderful technologies and everything. How come that when confronted with a little virus, which itself is not a living thing, doesn't have a mind and doesn't have an intention to harm us also, can really wreck our whole civilization, progress and way of life, so to say. So you find that individually we go through crisis in life, sometimes as a family, sometimes as a community. There might be a bushfire or cyclone or something in a localized way, but very rarely we go as a whole, globally, everywhere. And it has got very, very profound impact at various levels to do with our everyday activities, means of livelihood, but more than that, at our mental level, at our emotional level. And there are some very, very serious consequences that probably we have not realized what's down the line, because probably you're looking at more the physical dimension, the emotional dimension, the mental health dimension, all those things will reveal itself more. So we have to, people are trying to grab at something, hoping a vaccine would come or something will sort these things up. Depending on something outside, the government will give money or somebody, scientists will bring out a medicine. Can we do something to empower ourselves to be stronger and be more in control of the situation rather than being totally dependent on? What knowledge will empower us with that? So that's a very interesting question to ask, because you see, this Bhagavad Gita taught by Sri Krishna to Arjuna in a battlefield, not to some Swami sitting in a mountain cave in the Himalayas who is a seeker of God, gets a discourse from him. It's taught to a man in the battlefield of life. We all are having a global battlefield, so to say. And so he was very confused, even though he's a greatly accomplished person, disturbed, unhappy, and all those things. In his smart understanding, he tried to figure out it's better to run away from this battle of life and all that, or the battlefield. Then comes Sri Krishna, and I asked you to look at this whole Bhagavad Gita in this new context, not as a spiritual text, totally, where people who are seeking for God will go and read that thing, but this is our battlefield. Can this knowledge and wisdom empower us to find our everyday battle better than in this particular crisis, so to say? If it can, this is useful knowledge. So I want you to go through that, and while Swamiji is going through the details of the verses and chapters, I would like to give it a global picture that there is some knowledge and wisdom. And we can discuss, you can read, but it's you who have to really digest that knowledge, assimilate it and apply it in your own life. That's the part that you have to do. Somebody can cook the food for you, but you have to eat it and digest it and be nourished by it. So just don't expect that we'll come and listen to a lecture and then that's the end of it and suddenly something will happen. No, food can be cooked, but you have to do your part. So when you listen to these talks, you should make a resolve. I'll go and study those things and I'll pick up a few teachings, one or two, which I like very much. And I'll find that to figure out a way in my own personal life, if I'm a housewife, a doctor, a teacher, a nurse, or whatever position. And let me see if this knowledge can give me that inner strength and some meaning and purpose and some tools to overcome the problems that I'm having. If it is there, then this is good for you. Otherwise, it's some nice ideas you're listening to you, but never applied type of thing. So it has to become practical. Swami Vivekananda wanted to make it practical, and you have to be part of that thing. It's your own personal life, your journey, and you have to digest this knowledge. That's the important part. So you see, here is Arjuna, accomplished and everything. Look at him as a depressed person or confused, going through a struggle in life. And Sri Krishna is like a wonderful psychiatrist, understands the nature of man, everything, and helps him through the journey, through these 18 chapters he teaches. And at the end, something wonderful happens. That man who was all lost and confused, standing up on his feet, strong, and is ready to face a challenge that you and I would find it so difficult. He is here confronted with this duty of fighting and killing all his cousins and elders and all those things. How many of you and I can do that? What is that knowledge and power that can empower somebody to be able to execute such a terrifying duty, so to say? There must be some tremendous amount of strength from within, isn't it? So that is the power of the Vedanta philosophy. Can we take a few tidbits and help us in our journey? That's our way. So you see, what does Sri Krishna do? Susses him out, understands it. First he gives him knowledge, Sankhya Yoga, chapter 2, wherein he enlarges the understanding of who Arjuna is and what the whole world is and what's beyond this world and how we are connected to it. So he introduces this idea of the Atman, which Arjuna did not mention. There is something inside you which is eternal and immortal, does not die, is never born, never does die. And even when these people who are there in front of you ready to fight, the physical bodies might die, but they as the soul will not die. So in our situation here, if you're confronted as an elderly person sitting somewhere and confronted with this, infected by this virus, and you do not know you're going to survive or not, if this idea comes and you're embedded, it's not a superficial flying idea, but you have thought about it, assimilated it, and it comes to you, look, anything that is composed will go under decomposition. Birth will go through death, whether it's early or late, but that's the fate of everything. Yet inside me there is some aspect of me which cannot be touched by even death. It's there here and now. I might not know it. If I knew it, I am an enlightened person, free. But whether I know it not, it is there. That itself is such a wonderful, uplifting idea, and we need that type of positive idea. And it's the truth. It's not like we're imagining something, some story has been told, or we get something from outside. It is our own true nature. So it's very, very empowering in that. It's a beautiful, wonderful, uplifting, sublime. That's the first thing Sri Krishna teaches Arjuna. And then he says that you have to fight this battle, don't run away from it, but be established in that knowledge. Sthita prajna. Prajna means knowledge, that wisdom. It should not be simply some concept in your head that runs away when you are in the midst of the problem. You forgot about your Atman, Brahman, nature and everything, and the world has become too real for you. No, we have to infuse that idea of the Atman with such deep concentration and contemplation and constantly thinking that that idea becomes alive for us. Now, this is something very, very important, because many times a lot of people have been reading the scriptures, listening to hundreds of lectures and think, yet the idea is only an idea, an abstract, some concept in the head. It has not become a living thing, because somehow it is like a detached thing. You don't feel it is mind thing, it's something outside. It's not a living consciousness. So anything that you pour your heart and soul into it, it becomes alive. For a little baby, if you give a little doll, that doll becomes alive for the child, because she talks to it and all those things, because she loves it so much. So whatever is the object of our endearment, It's a living thing for us. You might buy a car, but you might love it so much. If anyone touches that car and scratches, you feel like you have been hurt because it is yours. Your whole love and affection is there. The Atman is the source of all love and affection, life. Asti, Bhati, Priyam. These are the three words. Priyam means that which is adorable, endearing, most loving, affectionate. You can feel that is that we feel for ourselves. I love my body, I love my mind, my own being, I love my family members and all that. They are physical beings, so you love them because the Atman is abiding inside that. And you are really loving the Atman but sugarcoating it by this person's personality out there. Because, think about it, if the Atman disappears, you don't go and embrace a dead body and say, I love this and let's keep it forever type of thing. So, it's not the body that we are loving, it's the soul that is inside the body that is the object of our real adoration. When it departs, all the affection also departs. But we don't have that discrimination all the time. So, that we are really attracted to the Atman, not the body on the superficial. So that type of awareness and discrimination comes through spiritual contemplation, and that awareness comes. So like this we become established this idea of the Atman's qualities, immortal. So it should be, when you say immortal, it's not just simply some word there. You should feel that strength coming out of that. Every now and then you will say, you will remind yourself, are they going to sleep, or some sickness comes, or you see somebody dying, you go to a funeral and all that. Everywhere this idea of the immortality of the Atman has to be driven. These are all so many occasions for us to teach ourselves the truth, if you take it. Otherwise it could be a very painful experience. Somebody dies, you go and you feel everyone is morose and crying. Okay, the physical body died and you join in that and you come back very much affected. But if you went there and you looked at that person and said, he was this person, he was born a baby somewhere, grew and did all the things which more or less I'm also doing, became old and went down that path. I too will go down that path. Everything here will pass. This body is not going to be permanent. So you have taken advantage of that situation to enlighten yourself a little bit. Maybe that is for a little while. But if you do it constantly with great of alertness, you will find as the mind becomes more anchored in that knowledge and truth of your true nature, its connection and its pull to the things of the world will automatically begin to weaken. You don't have to forcefully, unnaturally, in a harsh way, cruel way, extract your mind and cause suffering to you. That's not what renunciation is about. Renunciation is a very natural process of automatic elevation. So it's like if you want to go towards the east, you don't have to run away from west. West automatically fades away in the distance, so to say. It's giving up of the impermanent for something permanent, of something trivial for something great, of giving up of the microcosm for the macrocosm. It's giving up this attachment to this limited life and body to the real life and body. The Atman is the real life, it belongs there. So the more we dwell on the Atman and become established on that, then you'll be better equipped to face the battle of your life. And that's what Sri Krishna is teaching Arjuna. The art of fighting this battle of life. The art of living, and later on he will tell also the art of dying also, because it's not all life. Life ends. How do I die? Many people are very much afraid of death. Actually, the whole world is gripped in this fear of death. They're not afraid of the virus, but afraid of the death and the suffering this virus can bring on to that. So, how do we overcome is there a medicine? What vaccine, so to say, a spiritual vaccine that can cure us from this malady of fear and fear of death, fear of suffering? That would be a permanent cure. Knowledge is one of the greatest purifiers. Ignorance is the greatest cause of all suffering. Actually, the only cause of all suffering and misery is ignorance. Ignorance of our true nature, of our Atman nature, of our spiritual nature. When we have shifted and lost that knowledge and become identified with this body and mind, and this is my identity and personality, that I am born, I live and I die, then everything is temporary, shaking, shivering, at any moment it can go. This life is in the vast expanse of time in eternity. This life is like a drop of water that you'll put on your roti making plate in the morning. How long does it last? It just fizzles away and disappears. They say and talk about living in the present. That's a big thing. Mindfulness, being in the present. There's another art of living in eternity also. Think about how much of you can live in the present. Yes, I just focus. I don't worry about the future, and I don't don't have any anxiety about the future, and I don't carry about any baggage of the past. Be focused here, so as they say. But life is a journey. Can I step out of it and look at the whole totality of it and see then how the various pieces of the game of this jigsaw make sense? Otherwise, we are focused on one part and don't understand how the whole thing comes together, what's the meaning and purpose. So now and then we need to discover that art of zooming out, so to say, and seeing things as they really are. Because experience is the only teacher. And the experience we'll have depends on at what level our mind is, so to say. For example, if you ask an ant, is the earth flat? He says, definitely flat. Why an ant? Ask a person, is it flat? He said, yes, it's flat. But you pick that man out and take him into space and say, look at that earth now. And he sees a ball. Okay, a sphere out there. So, when he's out there at a distance, it appears as a sphere. When he comes and lands on the surface of the earth, it appears as a flat surface. It's not that the earth became flat or became a ball. It remained as it is. What was the difference? There were two experiences. And why were there two experiences? Depending on where that person is observing it from. That means our experience is relative. So, when we are identified with this physical body and mind and have this knowledge of this world through our sensory apparatus, the five senses that are embodied in the body, it is like we are living on the flat earth, so to say. Sri Krishna is trying to give Arjuna another picture of the whole thing of life, where he pulls him out and he said, look from a distance, and from that distance he says that beyond the man, beyond the body, beyond the mind, beyond the intellect, beyond the ego is something else which is eternal, immortal, imperishable, and that we all are really that eternal, immortal Atman. But he gives them that experience. Okay, conceptually we can teach certain things, but the real teaching comes through some experience. Swami Vivekananda says, experience is the only teacher. So, Gita, Upanishad, listening to lectures will give you some concepts. They will not liberate you and free you. At challenging times, if this idea comes to your mind, some relief comes. Then the idea disappears, the misery will come. Experience, religion is realization. We want that type of thing. So when you look at the life of Sri Ramakrishna, you see, he just didn't become a priest, happy to go to the temple, has this image of Mother Kali Bhavatarini, just like an ordinary priest, he's worshipping and happy with that. But he is a seeker of truth. You all us have to become seekers of that truth. That's the message he's trying to say. Not ordinary casual seekers. On certain days we'll go to the temple, or certain times in the morning, in evening you'll go to a room and shrine, light a lamp, an incense stick and offer that to God, and then rest of that life is a worldly life. I'm busy with so many things. It's a constant, like Swamiji said, there's no holiday in spiritual life. All the time you have to be alert to the ideal of freedom of the Atman, because you are in it here and now. It's not something that you'll get when you die or something. Yet we are not aware of it. How do we develop that awareness of all the time and then do all our duties being established in that knowledge, sthita prajna, being established in that knowledge and seeing things, everything through those new eyes of the Vedanta knowledge, so to say. You put the glasses and now you don't see only people, you don't see problems, you don't see life and death, you see something deeper into that. How do we put that glasses, new glasses of Vedanta knowledge? That is what Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2 tries to give a new pair of spiritual glasses, so to say. You see things through that type of thing. And you will see it's totally different. what was appearing as a physical material world, and I was thinking of myself as a physical mental being only. But there is, at a deeper insight, with a greater power of penetration of the beyond the senses, beyond the mind, beyond the intellect, you feel, you experience, you're supposed to experience as spiritual seeker, this spiritual consciousness that you are. And then we look at this wonderful life of Sri Ramakrishna. There are two books I would recommend you to read. One is the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, authentic recording of a spiritual incarnation of God, almost word to word. Very difficult to find in this age. You know, Upanishads and all that are recordings of a long time in Sanskrit language we don't understand, and then there are so many commentaries, and by the time you try to understand, you get totally bamboozled. So many commentators and all that. We want something in our language, in the very simple language, told to us where we don't have to wrestle with this concept so much. Understand it very quickly and apply it. Can somebody give us that? And not only quote this scripture, that scripture like that, who can teach and out of his own personal experience. So he's saying, I have experienced this. This is what I'm telling you. It has got a lot more authenticity and power. It becomes a living force, so to say. So you see, when Sri Ramakrishna goes to the temple and prays to the Divine Mother, he doesn't think it's a statue. He asks the question, is it only a statue, or is this really this Divine Mother is the person, some being who will answer my problems? Can I communicate with her? I need to talk to that God. If there's a God, I must see him, type of thing. Just not believing is not going to be much help, so to say. And so when he shows that if we have that intensity, vyakulta of yearning, you really want it, then that being who is there is not a heartless, cruel, somebody who has created us and indifferent to us. Is very, very near and dear to us, just like the mother and a child relationship. The child cries, what does the mother do? She leaves all her things, pots and pans, whatever she is busy cooking and things, and comes and takes the child in her lap, feeds her, nourishes her, gives her bath, and takes care of all of that. What does the child need to do? Only needs to cry and say, I need something, I need some attention. This is how Sri Ramakrishna teaches. God is very, very responsive, reactive. Actually, he knows, just like a mother knows, every time the child also does not need to cry. The mother knows this is the feeding time, this is the bath time, this is the sleepy time. She comes and does that. And you'll find that if you're aware, feel it, those things are happening all the time. But we are not really connected. So, when you want to make that connection, then this yearning should be there. This is called bhakti. I want to feel if there is a being in this world who has created me, who is looking after me, into whom I will go. If there is something there, I just don't want him to be hiding behind some curtain somewhere behind the screen. I want to have that face to face. I don't want to meet him when I die. I want to meet him here and now. Is he there, or is it somebody far away? And you'll find that when he lifts the curtain aside, then you find he is interpenetrating and present in everything. So that's how the Divine Mother shows to Sri Ramakrishna. In a flesh, she removes this veil of ignorance, lifts the mind from this physical level to that spiritual level. And in that, he sees that everything is palpitating with consciousness. The image is consciousness now. The altar is consciousness. The articles of worship where he was doing the puja, that has become consciousness. The marble floor, that has become consciousness. Looks around the building, everything is alive and consciousness. How did it happen? And why do you and I don't see it? Okay, because our minds are at this lower physical level right now. The spiritual sadhana is a constant effort to disconnect the mind, which is hooked to all these things around here, cut them, snip them, all this, and this mind will rise to a higher plane of consciousness, and at that level of consciousness, you will have that experience of that consciousness, the one behind me. Okay, so this is what spiritual life is, realization. Philosophy is you stick in this ground and try to study intellectually about the Atman Brahman there. That means you are not changing your position, but through mental constructs and linkages and ideas, you are trying to have an intellectual, conceptual picture of what the reality is. That is, but spirituality is not something about intellectual. We make a subjective change, and we do that all the time. This changing of levels of consciousness is something happens. Like right now, We are in a waking state of consciousness in which the five senses are functioning and I'm aware of the sound and forms and all those things there. But if somebody goes to sleep, then what happens? The world, the experience of this world stops for that particular person, and he's in this dream world and dream objects out there and he's doing dream things. He's a dream personality and all those things happen, isn't it? And you might go into deep sleep where even that stops. You don't know who you are, where you are young or old, male or female, all your problems and everything disappears in there. And that happens to us every day. Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti. That means we are all changing these levels of consciousness, but not in control of it. We are not voluntarily doing it. We just drift into some sleep because we are tired and all that. And then we drift into deep sleep and then we come out of it and we wake up in the morning and we are going through this every day. They say, the yogis say, there's a fourth state, the Turiya state, Atman state, where but you have to do it consciously. And sadhana means developing that capacity to be able to lift this mind by disconnecting it from the outside world first. So when we teach you the technique of meditation, we draw the mind out from outside, focus it within you, and then just like increase the intensity of the mind by focusing. Focusing means it's not that you are generating more energy, but you are intensifying it. You get a hand lens magnifying glass, you take it out in the sunlight, and then you put it out there, it focuses that light on one point. And what does that do? That puts that piece of paper or grass onto fire. Did not add more energy, but we just intensified it. Through meditation, we can develop that, or we improve that focusing power of the mind. So we take one form of God, one mantra, and then try to keep in that loop. Once, and you'll find that slowly that concentration comes, that penetration will come, that depth will come, and everything will reveal itself to you in a deeper way. I can use this example of a microscope. Take a hand lens and you see something through a hand lens, it seems magnified. It's a magnifying glass. But if you look through a microscope where you can adjust the power of magnification times 10, times 100, times 1000, you see different pictures. All those detail was there, but now with the help of this instrument, we are able to get more detailed information. Likewise, instead of having an external microscope or telescope, yoga is the technique by which we develop that internal mental microscope or telescope. And when we focus it within us, then we see what appears to be as matter, physical body, will become transformed as energy, prana. So, oh, I'm a energy. Then you go a little deeper. No, I'm manomaya kosha. It appears as thoughts and ideas. You go deeper, it becomes knowledge. You go deeper, it becomes full of bliss. Beyond that, it's just pure consciousness. So all those things are there here and now. It's not that you will become that. You will become the Atman or whatever. These coverings that are there, they are removed. Who will do that for you? You will have to do it for you. But somebody might be able to guide you how to do that and give you some clarity so that it inspires you to do that seeking. So, Sri Krishna discovered all those things, and he had the capacity to zoom into it every time and come back, goes into samadhi. At the slightest suggestion, his mind will shoot up there, and by force he will drag it down and then be able to converse with the devotees, people there, and give that spiritual knowledge. So that's the difference between an ordinary person and avatar. Incarnation is one who descends, avatirana, who comes down and takes a human body. We have become so much identified with this body that we are trying to struggle to get rid of this attachment and go up. That's the difference between the jiva and the incarnation of God, Jivatma and Ishwar Koti. So he comes and teaches us that. Let us look at his life. How does he teach us? So people have come. Imagine you are in Dakshineshwar in the room of Sri Ramakrishna. He is sitting on that bed. If you have been there or have seen some photos of it, people have assembled who have come from Calcutta. There are some various types of people, some judges and some lawyers, some teachers, some students, some devotees are there. He's having some conversation in very simple language, nothing complicated, through songs, through dance, through music, through specific instruction. He's trying to discuss, but the theme is God realization is the essence of life and how he can help each other. So he's sharing his experiences with others, and he says, hey, look, in the temple, Divine Mother has revealed to me. That means that knowledge and power is in her control. I reached out to her, and out of her grace, she gave that knowledge to me. It's not that I can go and by force take it. Like, you can't go to a school teacher and say, I'm going to pull the knowledge out of you. You have to open yourself and seek and ask questions, and the teacher then feeds you that knowledge and gives you understanding. Likewise, spiritual knowledge is something like that. So it tells that in the temple, the Divine Mother revealed to me that everything is consciousness. I saw that with my own experience. And here is this young man, Narendranath Swami, before he became Swami Vivekananda, university student, trying to understand that with his science and everything. And he's trying to make some sense out of it, He says, everything is God. How can it can be God? And I see physical things, material things, and this old man is saying it is all God. How can it be? So he's trying to wrestle conceptually. Instruction is given, but it's not making sense. So he goes out and he's sitting outside and talking with his friend. What is this? How can everything be God? This is blasphemy. God is some being somewhere there. He's telling he's in here. Even this tile is God. So he's joking with his friend. Look at him, He thinks everything is God. This tile is God. This is God. This is a little like intellectual people who get a few degrees begin to talk like that, Show me God. If there's God there, otherwise what's the proof of God? They begin to talk. Likewise. At that moment, Sri Ramakrishna came out of the room. Okay. And he said, these two boys are talking in this way. He said, you're talking about God. So, the first attempt was to teach him through instruction, intellectually, conceptually. It didn't work, didn't make sense. So, what does he do next? He touched him. And the rest is the story from the person who got touched. This second part you read in the life of Swami Vivekananda by his Eastern and Western disciples, where he himself narrates what happened at the touch of Sri Ramakrishna. He said, at the magic touch of the Master, I suddenly saw that everything was permeated in that ocean of consciousness. Means he also was having that same experience, not because of his own effort, not because of his intellectual thing, or he had done some sadhana, but because of that spiritual power of his spiritual teacher, who could uplift his mind from the sense-bound world to this higher level. So imagine somebody has lifted you up there, and you're seeing everything is consciousness. An ordinary person will get totally overwhelmed with that spiritual experience. Even you will see in the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna asked Sri Krishna, after midway through the Bhagavad Gita, can you please show me your universal form? And Sri Krishna showed him. And what's the reaction? He says, after some time, after giving all the descriptions, he says, this is too much for me. I can't handle this. Can you please take back this and show me your... So an ordinary person who has not done sadhana, who hasn't achieved that the purity of mind, will not be able to handle the reaction of that spiritual experience. We all say, God, can you reveal to us? But we need to have that power to be able to digest that. If you want to push a few milliamperes into a thin wire, that's fine. But if you want to say, put 100 milliamperes into 100 amperes, that wire will heat up and melt. So likewise, when our own body and mind has not developed the required purity, then the spiritual current awakens inside us, your whole body and mind would not be able to handle that. Our task in sadhana is to develop that purity of body and mind. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Sadhana means chitta shuddhi of the body and mind. And then when that God's grace comes, we will be able to hold it and contain it. So what happened to this guy? So you can imagine the caliber of this spiritual aspirant, this young boy who has come to Sri Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna has given him this wonderful spiritual experience. And what does this boy say? He said, let me see how long this lasts. Imagine how many people can do that. Many will be overwhelmed by that. So he says, I've had this experience, everything is permeated with this consciousness. And I went home and I sat down for my meal and I was eating and I didn't know how much I ate. And my mother saw this odd behavior because I'm not feeling I'm eating food. Everything is, I'm consciousness, the food is consciousness, the person who is feeding me consciousness, everything is there. See, everything is, the forms and things have become little like a hazy, shadowy. There's something else that is moving and acting through all that type of things. That is the type of experience he's having. And then he said, I let that happen, carry on. This experience lasted for 3 days in different degrees. And he tells that one day when I was walking down the street, I saw this carriage with horses, tick-tock, coming. And I saw that I'm that consciousness, the horses are also the consciousness, the road is that consciousness. I didn't even feel inclined to move out of that way. I went to this particular place, there's a little pond in Calcutta with a metal railing around there. And that doesn't appear to be really solid thing. I went and touched it. Is it real or is it like a dream type of thing? He said this experience lasted for 3 days. Slowly my mind came down and then I began to see things like our what we call normal thing. And he said thereafter I could never deny what Sri Ramakrishna taught, this Advaita thing. That one behind the many exists here and now. Why don't you see it? Why don't I see it? What's that power that withholds this vision and experience from us? This is called Maya. And it's the power of the divine by which he or she hides the spiritual aspect and makes us identify with us, with this body mind, and we think we are separated from that. And that's how the play goes on. But the one behind the many is all the time there, here and now. It's not something that will happen to you. It's just that we don't have the capacity to access that. So the teachers say that, look, if you can have this understanding and you think about it and visualize this all the time, and so go around and say, look, I'm seeing this world sitting on the beach or at home, but if I were an enlightened person, how would I see? Do that visualization and I will see that everything is palpitating with consciousness. That's what I should be doing. I should be able to see God here in this tree, in this plant, in this building. When the actual experience happens, that is how it's good. So that what Swami Vivekananda says, don't seek for God. See Him. He's there in front of you. Seeking means as if He's not present in front of you, you'll find Him somewhere else. He's right now in front of you in all these forms. It's a wonderful thing, isn't it? It's not that He's actually is inside me, He's outside me, He's present in everything, and everything exists because that absolute existence is there. If everything is beautiful, because the beauty of that divine Atman is shining through the flower, through the people and all those things. Everything is lovable and adorable because of that quality of the Atman shining through everything. Everything is conscious, that means it's living, whether it's a little insect or plant or animal or human being or God, because that consciousness of the divine is palpitating through all that. What a wonderful, beautiful idea. How do we hold on to this idea intellectually and then try to see through this mental eyes? It's a wonderful type of spiritual discipline. You sit down somewhere and you see things through the eyes. Then you look through the mental eye and your gaze becomes sort of fixed and your mind begins to play and you said, behind everything is this thing. And you try to hold on to that idea as long as possible. That behind this body, behind this mind is a consciousness. Behind that piece of wood, the tree, that little insect, everything is divine. This is what spiritual life is about. It's a full-time job, not you become aware of presence of God in the shrine when you see a little image of God in whatever form, or when you go to the temple or something like that. We are in His presence and connected with Him all the time, here and now. How do I see it? See Him? Well, you have to ask for it. Knock on the door, it will open. So Christ teaches, all the spiritual teachers say, knock and thou shalt find it. Ask and it will be given unto you. Seek. So this knocking, seeking, asking is the part that the seeker has to do. The response will come from the other side, and it might not happen immediately, but when it will happen, there's no condition. It's not like that. You have to repeat your japa and mantra for 10,000 times for 50 years and you'll be meditating for. Sri Ramakrishna says, God's grace is not conditional. Whomever He wants, He'll give to you. But He sees the sincerity of the devotee. That's the only thing, the qualification is that He watches the heart of the mind. So here we see, in a different way, how the same being who was born as Rama, who came as Krishna, and then again came as Ramakrishna, in different ages and times, he is giving the same teachings in different ways. But all of them are trying to teach a method that is relevant for that particular age. We can take those teachings from the Bhagavad Gita, we can study the teachings of the Sri Ramakrishna from the Gospel and his life, and sometimes you find this makes much easier sense, like that story, that incident I have narrated. You think about it, read about it and try to visualize it, and how did Sri Ramakrishna have that experience, and if I were given, God was gracious to me, this is what I would see, and if I would see that, it would be so wonderful, isn't it? And you think about it, think about it, think about it, that idea becomes alive. Okay, the doll of the baby becomes alive, it's a living thing. And once that idea becomes alive, it will captivate you, and it will force you to dedicate some time and effort towards that, and you'll find that the ball begins to roll. So Sri Krishna is telling Arjuna, as a great psychiatrist, this is the knowledge, sthita prajna. Be established in that knowledge. Then he talks about karma yoga, because he is in the battlefield of life, Arjuna. So he has to fight, but there's an art of fighting. Work without any attachment, because you don't work. It is that consciousness inside us that is the one that's working. So the result of that work should also be given to the true doer. So in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, you will see throughout he says, God alone is the doer. Man is only an instrument in the hands of the divine. The ocean alone exists. You, I as waves are just a little part, but the energy that flows through the wave really belongs to the ocean. So we are connected to that. How do I feel that connection with the ocean, so to say? That is the process or the goal of spiritual life, that connection. Because we are connected, but somehow we are not experiencing it. So I think I am alone, and I try to establish the connection with what people, so my family, my community and all that. But ultimately, no matter how many people you have, you feel you are alone in a crowd. You go and stay in a big auditorium with stadium with 10,000 people. Do you feel everyone has empowered you and I am so safe and things? You still feel I am an individual. You go and stand on the railway station, thousands of people are going, but you are feeling alone in the crowd. This is the plight of man, because we have become disconnected from everything and anything. The problem, the malady that we have is this disconnectedness. Why? Because we are operating at a very physical, superficial level. That connection that we are looking for is at a spiritual level, when all the differences disappear and everything becomes one. That oneness is that experience of pure consciousness, the Divine Mother or the Shakti or the Brahman, which is fundamental to the whole universe. That means you dive deep into the ocean, then you see water everywhere. But when you are in the surface, you see different waves. And these waves are clashing and fighting and struggling, and might is right and all those type of philosophy comes out of that. So how do we integrate ourselves and go deeper and deeper? Use science. In science, we have got this, like in mathematics, you have got integration and you have got differentiation. Integration takes you to the source. Differentiation takes you away. Okay. Pravritti takes you outside. Nivritti takes you inside. Religion or spirituality is that force that takes us towards that oneness. Anything that takes you to that oneness is morally right, ethically right. That is called dharma. Anything that takes you away creates the differences between men and men, creates the separation, anger, hatred, jealousy, greed, and all those type of things. That is adharma, that is immoral, unethical, and that is not spiritually good for us, because it deprives us of that energy the power that's within us. So that's why religion has got these don'ts. Don't do these things because it will take you away. Do these things because it will take you inside. So means give you greater degree of connectivity. So love, kindness, compassion, unselfishness, sacrifice, all these things try to unite us together until we reach that center of the circle where all the radii meet, so to say, and then you can feel yourself one with all the radii, because that's where they are all connected. That one where all these points come and join together is called Atman, Brahman, God, and that's where we are all connected. The closer we are to the circle, the more integrated we are, the more poise we have, the more balance we have. Okay, so if you take a string and you tie a little weight to it and you give it a spin, swirl it around. In physics, we know the further you are away from the center, the more is the angular velocity. So really spinning very fast. But as you come closer and closer and closer, the head is spinning less and less. But right at the center, you are perfectly still, balanced. You have not stopped the activity around, but you have changed your location from the activity to the center. Finding that center and that balance in the midst of all the turmoil that is going on is what spiritual life is all about. It doesn't mean you run away into the mountain cave and sit there, there's no activity there, I'm temporarily still. But the moment you come back, you are out of balance again. That's why Sri Krishna is teaching him, don't run away from the battlefield of life. But I will teach you a technique and method that while in the midst of this, there is a point in a center that if you can reach that, you'll find nothing can touch you. That would be wonderful, isn't it? It's possible. Spiritual life is all about that. How to regain that. So when the sages realize this truth in their personal experience, and when they try to communicate to us, they take the help of various symbols, rituals and ceremonies and stories and parables and all those things. And one of the most beautiful ones, there are two very nice ones which show this wonderful balance of that stillness center and the tremendous activity. Okay. One of them is this image of the Divine Mother Kali. Where is she standing? She is standing on Shiva. What is Shiva doing? He is perfectly still, prostrate on the ground, not moving at all. And on her chest is this Divine Mother Shakti, Kali, is dancing this wild dance of creation. Srishti, Sthiti, Vinasha. She is doing that. Universes are rolling out of her and drawing into that, like that. Everything is happening. But at the core, she is standing on Shiva. So this Shiva and Shakti, these two sides, the Atman, the Paramatma, Purusha and Prakriti, this duality is what this whole picture is all about. That while we are seeing this tremendous activity around, at the core of it is perfect stillness, balance. Okay, so that's one meaning of that symbology, that she is the Shakti. Sri Ramakrishna keeps on talking and says, there's only one reality. Sometimes we call it Brahman, at other times we'll call it Shakti. Brahman is when the waves of the ocean have subsided, everything is perfectly still, and the same ocean can again become full of waves, and that's called Shakti. He says a snake is coiled up and perfectly still, that would be a Brahman state, and the same snake is wriggling around, that is called Shakti. So that power which creates these universes after universes out of herself, create doesn't mean she produces something outside, it's still a creation within herself. She expands, it becomes differentiated, so to say. When she folds in, everything becomes one. How do I explain this? I was thinking. Now, when we say creation, one becomes many, it's not like something like a multiplication. Okay, one cell divides into two, two becomes four, so you're replicating one each other like that, and it goes on. Many times when we feel, because we're looking from the cell's perspective, so to say, that limited, that's how our understanding is. Actually, it is not like that. It is like when it becomes differentiated, it becomes like a fraction of the same thing. So the whole integrity is maintained, but inside it appears as little parts. For example, if you visualize a balloon of water, a transparent balloon or plastic of water, sphere of water out in space. So when you, it's perfect sphere, look at that, and you begin to cool it. As you cool it, the water will begin to crystallize, freeze. And as the freezing happens, it breaks into little sections and boundaries are happening. So the overall remained as it is, but inside certain parts begin to appear. Try to understand in that way. When God or the cosmic divine power begins to create, she doesn't create the world outside her. Actually, the undifferentiated begins to appear as differentiated. That means that consciousness begins to appear as knowledge, begins to appear as mind, begins to appear as matter. Modern day science, those who know a little bit of physics and quantum mechanics, know that what appears to be to us as physical matter, as atoms, is really energy. Okay, it appears, you say an atom, a molecule is made of atoms, atoms are made of nucleus and electrons, and you go further down, what are the nucleus made of subatomic particles and quarks, and eventually the material aspect disappears, and there's these gaps between this what you call nucleus and the electron. What's in between? Is it empty space? Previously people said nothing, means no thing, appears to be space, but now they say it is full of something called dark matter or dark energy. It's there, but just because our senses are not able to pick it doesn't mean it is not there. That means it's a continuum, but we are able to see through our senses only, and so we see the tips of the iceberg, but below that the iceberg is all connected. So this is the universe like that. It appears to me that between you and me there's an empty space. No, there's a whole continuum. So when the mind rises to that spiritual consciousness, then all the names and forms disappear, and you find that's an ocean of water. Just like if you go deep into the ocean, dive, every direction you look, what do you see? Water, water, water in all directions. Something like that it is there, that type of experience, but not outside, within you, undifferentiated. So that's in different ways they try to explain. So they say there is this power of Shiva called Shakti, and that because she is a creator, she is the feminine power, divine mother, and she brings forth this whole universes. In one section, in one part of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, he said, there is these three planes of Akasha, so space. Mahakasha, the physical space in which we see things, ourselves, plants, animals, planets, galaxies, solar systems, and everything, is called elemental space. Finer than that is the Chit Akasha, knowledge space, in which the subtle forms of these things are there as ideas, which materialize, so to say, as an idea. Idea is a subtler, Swami Vivekananda talks about it as a Shabda state of a thing. It's the idea that with the help of right material and right tools, one can give shape to it. For example, a carpenter has an idea of a table in his head, but he has got the skill and some timber, he can make the table. If he destroys the table, that doesn't mean the idea of the table has been destroyed. So that idea remains in this knowledge space, Chit Akasha. Finer than that is called Chid Akasha, the knowledge, the space of consciousness. And so everything exists in that consciousness and vibrates forth and materializes. We say Srishti, it remains here for a while and then it falls back into that consciousness. It's not coming literally from past, from the beginning of Big Bang or type of thing. It is really rolling from the higher frequencies of consciousness, becomes more and more grossified, we call it mind. It becomes more materialized, we call material things. So matter is concretized ideas. Ideas are concretized consciousness, so to say. Spiritual life is trying to access in this vertical direction, not flow along with this flow of time, so to say. Instead, there was a moment called a Big Bang, and all these things came out. What did the thing come out of it? Nothing. Something can't come out of nothing. Oh, don't ask that. We do not know. But there was a bang, and then things are rolling out like that. So it's one part of the story, where the Vedanta says everything comes out of pure consciousness, which is non-material. which is the potency of all energy and knowledge, and everything is there. It vibrates forth just like water vapor will cool down into water. Water will freeze into solid ice, but in the reverse process, the ice will melt into water. Water vapor will become into invisible water vapor. Likewise, water will merge into invisible water vapor. Likewise, creation comes out of the causal through the subtle into the gross. And we, as human beings, are a combination of this. So here is this gross body, behind is the mental mind, we are aware of that. Inside there is some eye sense is there. Up to that much we know. Beyond that, we are lost, so to say. Those who dive deep within themselves and explored those dimensions of our being, they came and said, no, the real thing is that nameless, formless consciousness, and that is the Atman. And if you can realize that here and now, you have conquered death, you have become immortal. You have access to that infinite knowledge, you are omniscient. You have infinite power, you are omnipotent. You are the source of freedom and beauty and glory, everything. That is the real McCoy, so to say. And we are that. We are the truth. The truth is not in the book. It's not in the temple, in the mountains. And we are the truth. The world is a mirror in which we see our reflection. Somewhere we see more, somewhere we see less. But the fact we have to realize that we are not little miserable beings that have popped in this world from nowhere, and we do not know where we are going, and we are so clinging onto this body with all our might, and any threat that comes in form of hunger or disease or natural disaster or whatever is there, we think is a tremendous threat to us. Why? In that spiritual ignorance, whatever we think to be real, we'll hold on to that. But in that enlightened view, zooming out, so to say, and looking at the whole things in the spiritual framework, we say, in this vast eternity of time, our life is not longer than a flash of lightning in a dark night. One flash, it's gone. If you took a piece of paper and said, this is the moment of Big Bang, and this is where we are, and you try to say, I'm going to use a pencil to draw a line that will denote the duration of my lifetime, you'll find that whatever you will draw will be too thick. In the billions of years, if you draw the line, you will not be able to even see it. That is how insignificant this life is, so to say. And we make a big deal about it. But really, we are that eternity. We are that universal being. How wonderful we are in our truth and how miserable we are in our ignorance. Vedanta tries to put that picture, the global picture, the total picture, very empowering, very uplifting. The moment you remind yourself that, all fear sort of disappears. I'm a lion, not a sheep. I'm the eternal immortal being. Many bodies I've given up, many bodies will go also. It does not matter. Nothing can touch me. Death cannot touch me. Misery cannot touch me. Nothing can touch me. The clouds come, hide the sun for a while, but they don't touch the sun. They will disappear. Likewise, the clouds of ignorance has come into the mental space, and we have forgotten the real self. But it's there all the time. How do we use the power of knowledge to go beyond the clouds, where no cloud can block your view from the truth anymore? That cloud is in the mind. And that's why we are studying this mind management techniques, because if you're on the other side of the mind, then nothing can block your view. So the mind itself, when it's pointed towards the world, external world, it binds itself. And with the same mind is redirected inwards, then it frees you. Maneva manushyanam karanam bandha vimoksha. Mind alone is the cause of both bondage and freedom. And Sri Krishna tells Arjuna right in the beginning, you yourself are going to decide whether you are going to be your own friend or your worst enemy. And the method is this: if you can, with this proper understanding, change the direction of your mind and lift it up to higher planes, you are your best friend. And if you come down, that's what the meaning of depress is. Press down, down, down. Then you remove yourself or disconnect yourself, and very little of that inner power comes, and you feel so miserable and so limited and all those things. Just makes logical sense. Having understood that, What will you do to self-empower yourself? Are you going to pray and cry to some god or something like this? You're seeking for him here and there in the heavens. Nothing can help you if you do not help yourself. Have that faith. This is called Atma Shraddha. Assert your lion nature. Last week I talked about the sheep nature. Okay, if you keep on eating the grass and bleating like a sheep, somebody will slaughter you. Okay, but if you behave like a lion, then you understand your own strength and power and freedom and might and majesty. That Vedanta is that knowledge which will awaken that lion. Arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached. We have to awaken ourselves to our Atman nature, spiritual nature. It should not be static piety. I know all these verses and I have listened to these lectures, but I'm still behaving like the sheep. I go to the temple, I do my puja, I do all these festivals throughout the year, Ramnavami, Janmashtami, Diwali, Shivratri, Durga Puja, this puja, but everything is happening. I'm still here when I was 50 years back. That means something is not happening. Your engine is running, but the gear is not engaged. The car is not moving. One of our Swamis used to call static piety. Nothing is moving. We have to engage the gear and convert it into an actionable thing, dynamic. He used to call it dynamic spirituality. What Swami Vivekananda tried to teach us is that method of dynamic spirituality. What Sri Krishna is trying to teach Arjuna is that method of dynamic spirituality. How we can be in the midst of the action and nothing can touch us. So I talked to you about this beautiful idea of Shiva and Divine Mother Kali, the Purusha and the Prakriti. The other beautiful emblem or symbolic representation is the Shivalinga. Very profound, and maybe next week I'll explain to you how in the midst of all tremendous spinning activity, there is an axis which is perfectly still. And if you can move and touch that center, you can be the witness of all tremendous activity and not be affected by all those things, creations, universes coming and going, all those things. In the perfect example you see, in the midst of the battlefield of Mahabharata, the teacher of the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna himself is the example of one who is established in that center. Everything is happening, but nothing is affecting him. How do you have that wonderful poise and balance, isn't it? That is possible, and spiritual life is trying to understand that conceptually and then working out in our everyday life using all the activities that we are doing as exercises. You don't have to go to a gymnasium and have all this fancy equipment to build muscle. You can be building using a piece of brick or whatever is lying around to do. So there are so many things, actions are there which can be re-engineered as exercises for the development of the spiritual power, provided you become alert and smart to convert that into your opportunity for your spiritual development. Otherwise, life is drudgery and painful and all those type of things. You want to run away because it's problematic. Actually, it's not a problematic. It's a gymnasium where we come to do exercises to make ourselves spiritually strong. So, I would like you to read the Bhagavad Gita as a wonderful manual to be taken up by young people, not when you are about to go. Then you have to learn the art of dying type of thing. How do I keep my mind on the truth so that when I leave this body, my mind is at the contemplating the spiritual truth. But here, this battlefield should be converted into a playfield, so to say. And knowledge can bring about that transformation. Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitram vidite. There is no greater purifier than knowledge. And spiritual knowledge is the highest purifier. So whenever there is some misery, some suffering, understand the source is ignorance. And who is going to solve it? We ourselves have to do it. Somebody might help it, some lectures, some books, some teachers, but we have to take the whole responsibility on our own shoulder. 1/10 you have to do, not whole of it. Sri Ramakrishna says, you take one step towards God, God takes 10 steps towards you. That one step is your effort. Okay, and he checks out. You are serious, you see there's a response. And you have to verify this in your own personal life. Is it simply something I have to believe because some Swami has said, or I'm going to test it out? And that's out of that experiment will come that Shraddha, that Vishwas. Really it works. Then you know that you're not alone. There is somebody there. Mother is there to take care of the child. But the child has to cry out a little bit saying, I'm hungry. That's how it works. So we'll discuss this next week. Until then, try to read those first two chapters of the Bhagavad Gita in this light and try to put into context and develop that more global picture of life. Not this day today or this week or this month or this year or this life. Many, many lifetimes we are coming and going. And you want to put an end to it. How? Not through suicide or whatever, something like that, but by realizing that eternal immortal Atman. The moment you do that, this coming and going is put at rest. The method is there, the solution is there. We have to learn the art of applying it in our everyday life. Pray to God with all sincerity and you'll find that He'll provide to you all that you need. Just like a mother provides to the child. You have to ask with great earnestness and sincerity and the response will come. Until then, meditate, keep safe and keep a part of the mind on these spiritual truths. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.